Right guys, I'm back again with a workout this time, as promised in the last video. Said I was going to do one video on training, one video on nutrition. This is going to be a training one. I did hope to get a kind of normal workout in for you guys, but this wasn't a normal one by any means. It was in a small studio gym that I use for PT, so it was a bit of a limited equipment workout, but you know, while it's not quite the Body Academy, we've not got the choice of machines and things like that, like we still made it work, and it's still going to be hopefully an interesting watch for you guys. So without further ado, let's just get on to it, and hopefully this time everything goes well. This is like the third time recording, so hopefully this time it all goes well. And we're not on that exercise, we're starting with the first one. So the first exercise we've got is like the upper pec bias fly. Now, bias is a word to use here because we can't isolate a muscle or part of a muscle or anything like that. There's always going to be other muscles in play. There's always going to be other players on the team. It's just that like maybe one player's got the ball, if that makes sense. One player's doing a bit more than the rest of them, and that's the simplest way to describe that. You're always going to have like that crossover. Even if we're like biasing the upper pec, some of the lower pec fibers are still going to work. We're going to have muscles that are maintaining the integrity of the joint, or all of the joints in the body as well, because I couldn't simply sit on this bench without some sort of muscular contraction going on somewhere. And then we've also got the muscles that make sure we stay in the plane that we're moving in. Like a simple way of thinking about this is like if I'm coming up and in like this, there's muscles making sure my arm doesn't go like that and just fall. So there's always going to be a lot of guys on the team. As I say, just some of them have got the ball, and in this instance, it's the upper pec we're trying to have get to have the ball. So I've got the bench set up on a fairly high incline, and what I'm trying to do here is get my upper chest, and I'll put a photo up in here, I'll show you guys some of the anatomy as well, but I'm trying to get those upper pec fibers on top of the axis. So the axis I'm moving around in this instance is going to be the shoulder joint, and that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get that upper chest up nice and high. The cables are going to be set low to high, which again lends itself to working those upper fibers of the pec. Arms ideally in the starting position, so like my starting position down here is actually quite abducted. Ideally, we'd be a bit more adducted, so a bit more like closer in like this, and then our arm path would be a bit more like that, which again would just kind of follow those upper pec fibers a little bit better. Again, I'll put a picture on the screen so you guys can actually see what that looks like, but ideally that's where it would be. Now, when I do this, for some reason, I can't stay there. It just feels like it feels uncomfortable to me. It doesn't feel quite right. So it might be something to do with my structure. It might be something to do with the range I've got available there, or something like that. But yeah, generally speaking, I would keep it as close as feels comfortable to your torso. So elbows as close as it kind of feels comfortable there, within reason. And then simply, once you get going, just simply think about taking it inside your elbow towards your chin, which is exactly what I'm doing here. And yeah, that's basically it. Think about taking the inside of that elbow towards the chin. There's probably not an exercise that I've done before that I've actually felt biases the upper pec fibers as much as this one. I really rate this one, so it's definitely worth giving a try. And then obviously in terms of intensity there, yeah, we're pushing things pretty much to failure. We're even using a little bit of momentum to get a couple extra reps there, or one extra rep there. So yeah, obviously the intensity of the exercise is going to be pretty important too. Like simply just picking a good exercise, having a good setup, that's not going to be enough. We need to make sure the intensity is there as well. Now, we're moving on to the cable chest press. Now with this one, and probably with the last one, we probably should have checked something called your active range. So the position you can get to by contracting your muscles. I've really not paused this on a good point here, have I? But the position you can get to by just contracting your muscles. So let's just make this bigger for a little second. And the way to check your active range for a pressing movement or a chest press movement like this would be to simply just sit up, pull back as if you're doing a bench press, and then that's when we can see how far back we can get there. So that's as far back, in fact, maybe a little further, that I can get by contracting my muscles. Okay, so that is like the lowest point of that for me. If I had like a barbell in my hands, I could pretty much touch that off my chest. So for me, that's not an issue. For you, it might be. So it's something that's definitely worth checking. And when we're doing exercises like this, we don't want to be pushed into a passive range, which is anything beyond that really. We don't want to be pushed into that, because obviously if that weight had its way with you, it would pull your arm back as far as it can, and possibly out that active range where we don't have the contractile ability to get there. So you know, that can cause issues. Like for some people, like they could do it once and it could be an injury. Some people could do it the rest of their life and get away with it. It just depends. But it's a bit like smoking in that sense. You could smoke 20 fags a day and get away with it for the rest of your life, but are you willing to take that risk? Probably not. If you want to train for a long time, it's not worth taking that risk. In terms of setup, this time again I've got the cables set up so that line is kind of coming like kind of mid pec. That's kind of what I was aiming for there. The degree of like abduction, like where your elbows are basically, so we can see mines are kind of like coming out just under like kind of 90 degree there, so I'm kind of like somewhere up here. That just totally depends on what's comfortable for you and for your structure, so just find the point where you feel comfortable, where you've got the most range, and kind of work away at that. I've got the bench slightly back as well, like the eagle-eyed out ears might have noticed I've got that bench slightly back. I find that's just promoting that position that I want to be in with my kind of chest up and that kind of like thoracic extension, which is where we kind of want to be whenever we're doing pressing. We want our chest to be up and kind of forward like this, and as we press we kind of want it to look like this. We don't want to see like our shoulder coming way forward and like a lot of what's called protraction, because if you press like this and you kind of like crunch into it and you're not kind of keeping your chest up nice and proud, that's when you're going to start to feel things on your shoulders. That's when you're going to start to feel these presses in your shoulders more than your chest. So it's all about that, like keeping your chest up nice and high, nice and proud. And a lot of times people, or I've even said it a lot in the past, is like pin your shoulder blades back, or not even pin them back, but like pinch them back slightly, which does work, but you don't want to like try and hold your shoulder blades back, because like your shoulder blades have to move as your arm moves. It's a thing called scapulohumeral rhythm, and look it up. Just look it up on YouTube, type it into YouTube, and you'll see something on that. Basically, because of that, your shoulder blades have to move as your arm moves. So you're not keeping them pinned back here, otherwise your arms aren't moving. So I'd think more about bringing your chest up, getting into that thoracic extension, upper back extension, whatever you want to call it, and keeping your chest up nice and high. And it's going to give your pecs a bit more leverage there as well, just by doing that. So again, as I'm talking about that, I'm thinking about other things as well. Like once we're down here, we could get a big deep breath in as well and expand our rib cage, because of course those pec muscles sit on top of the rib cage again, which is going to give the pecs a bit more leverage and make you a bit stronger in that starting point. Because like in any pressing movement, we're going from weak to strong. Like we're weakest here, we're strongest here. So we want to kind of give ourselves as much an advantage in the starting position as possible by getting into that position that we were just talking about. This exercise as well, like because of like the way, like because it converges, we go from like kind of lengthened to like fully shortened here with the pec, which is good. And then also it's going to drop off a little bit as well as that cable gets closer to our shoulder joint. Although I wouldn't say it drops off massively. I could probably do like dropping off a little bit more for me anyway. But yeah, still great exercise. And again, another one where you really feel your pecs going on this. Again, intensity. Yeah, that's the face of intensity. Moving on from that, we've now got the dumbbell chest press, and with this one, like I put it in third because the dumbbells only go up to 40, so that's actually the main reason this is third. I actually like getting this exercise in first. I like going heavy on this. I've been pushing like the 50s for like, what was it, like 10 the last time. 55s are moving as well for like 4 or 5 at a minute too, which to be honest, on and off with the dumbbells recently in the past few years, and I've never really got above 55, so I'd like to get up to a decent set of 55, especially before the prep starts. But anyway, that's not what this one's about. But yeah, we put this in third just because we've only got 40, so we had to kind of make this hard. But that does kind of make sense in a way. It kind of makes some sort of sense, because we, like, from a like length tension point of view, we fatigue in the shortened range first. So we've actually used exercises that have given us some sort of like shortened range challenge and kind of fatigued that range. And now we have an exercise that's going to be a lot of challenge in the lengthened range, so the starting position where the pec is lengthened, but next to kind of no challenge at the top. So when we're here, this is when obviously the most challenge is in this exercise, and when we're, I didn't catch the pause in time there, let's try again. When we're basically here, that's when the least challenge is, because the line of force from that dumbbell, let me just see if I can get my wee crayon out. The line of force from that dumbbell would pretty much, that's not a straight line at all. Force is always going to be in a straight line, but the line of force from that dumbbell would be coming right through the elbow and right through the shoulder. So it's going right through the two axes that are going to get challenged here, so, or the two main ones. So yeah, you could hold, you know yourself, if you've done this exercise, you could hold them all day at the top. You probably couldn't hold them all day at the bottom. So yeah, that's obviously goes from being really hard at the start to being really difficult at the top, and that doesn't match the strength profile of the muscle. The strength profile of the muscle is obviously, or not the muscle, but like for a pressing movement, is weak to strong, and the dumbbells go from being heavy to light. So that doesn't match, but that doesn't make it a bad exercise by any means. It doesn't mean that we don't use that exercise. It's just something to consider and something to consider throughout your training. As long as you're challenging both ends of the range or the full range throughout your training, then that's all you want to do. But yeah, so basically, you could also argue. I'm saying like we've challenged the shortened range and we've tired the shortened range first, so it makes sense to then go into a lengthened range thing. But you could also argue that we tend to see more growth in lengthened ranges, so basically what I just said about fatigue in the shortened range could be dismissed to some degree. We could say actually maybe we should bias the lengthened range exercises first because that's where we see the most growth. But anyway, these are all like nuances, small things that, to be honest, it's not going to make that much of a difference as long as you're like challenging both ends of the range, as long as you're challenging them with intensity, I'm saying both ends of the range, so as long as you're challenging the full range, challenging it with intensity, then you're going to see growth. You're going to see growth over time. Again, this is on a slight incline. The chest is up nice and high again. We're trying to extend through the upper back as much as possible, give that chest as much leverage as possible. Something that like I see a lot of people doing on this one is like when we're coming down, like here for instance, it's like the dumbbell falling into like internal or external rotation. So like the dumbbell's kind of either falling over this way or falling over that way. They were both meant to be arrows. That's a bit better at that. But like what begins to happen is like as someone presses, so like imagine you've got a bird's eye view of the press here. As they press, like their arms either come up here or they either like internally rotate down here. And then if that dumbbell's in my hand and if I'm lying flat, the dumbbells pull my arm like that. So that's how a lot of people lose reps on this one, especially beginners. I see that a lot in people that haven't maybe got the stability of someone that's been training for years. See that quite a lot. And again, like you want the dumbbells to be like kind of stacked directly over your elbow there as well, because like in terms of like where the dumbbell is here, again, you'd want the dumbbell like right there, so it's right over the elbow, right over the wrist. If it's in here, that's going to cause a challenge to the bicep. If it's out here, it's going to cause a challenge to the tricep, or more of a challenge to both of those muscles, because again, they're both going to be working. They're both massive shoulder stabilizers, so they're both going to be working there. Anyway, before I bore you guys to death too much on that, I feel like I talked a lot on that one. We're going to move on to exercise 4 once I eventually finish this set. So exercise 4 is a little superset for... Fucking hell, felt like I was going to fall off the chair there. A little superset for side delts. Now, this is one I actually got from Paul Standell. It's a really, really good one just to challenge the side delts here. Or absolutely batter the side delts is probably the word. So we're starting with some standing lateral raises. Now, some people might get a little bit confused at like how I'm doing this here as you watch it, probably thinking, what the fuck's going on there? But when you look at this is actually a really good way of challenging my side delt fibers, because if we go back, like the cables or the resistance, whatever you want to call it, the cables are the resistance in this instance, so we can see our like line of force from the resistance here is lining up really nicely with where my side delt fibers would be in this instance, because they would be something like that, and the cable, although not perfectly aligned, would be something like that. So there is some decent alignment there, and I actually feel this a lot in my side delts, like when I'm doing it like this. So something to think with a side delt as well, or with delts in general, is that the delt is a fan shaped muscle, so it's good to hit it from a few different angles. But yeah, with this one, once we start failing on this, we're going to go into a lying lateral raise. Now the reason for that is the standing lateral raise is obviously harder. The obvious reason for that being harder is because you've got the weight of your arm to contend with. When you're standing up, the weight of your arm is part of the challenge, but once you're lying down, you've still got to hold your arm up, but the muscle that's actually, or the part of the muscle that's been challenged by that is now the front delt, if that makes sense. The front delt is what's holding your arm up against gravity, no longer the side delt. So the side delt's got less challenge to work with there. I hope that kind of makes sense. But yeah, lying down, I've got a slightly different alignment here. And therefore it's going to bias different parts of the delt more than others. If we hopefully I'll try and find a Kapanji picture where like he's got the picture we divides the delt into like 7 sections. But yeah, anyway, long story short, it's mostly side delts, and we're going on some more side delt stuff here as well. So with this one, with the dumbbell one, I've got a chest support for stability here. So you see a lot of people doing these and all the hip swings and things that come with it. But yeah, that bench is just going to totally take that out of the game, and it's going to give you less juggle here as well. You don't have to worry about like stabilizing yourself, holding yourself in place, when you can simply just lean against a bench. It makes it so much easier. It doesn't make the exercise easier, but like it gives you that less juggle. That's probably the best way to describe it. But again, a slightly different challenge on the delts, slightly different like alignment with different fibers of the delts. Again, you probably don't need to worry about this too much right now, but it's still something that is worth thinking about. This one's very hard at the top, and it's not so hard at the bottom. Again, if you've done these, I imagine most people that are watching this have done this exercise, you'll realise this is a shit ton harder at the top than it is at the bottom. Like, again, you could hold them at the bottom all day if you wanted to. Like, we're hearing some big grunts there, this is getting serious. So the actual effective part of this rep is pretty minimal. It's that top bit of the rep. It's like kinda, I'll get the crayon out again, like the effective bit of the rep is kinda like here to like maybe here, you could say. This part of the rep, pretty ineffective, because there's not going to be much of a moment arm to the shoulder, there's not going to be much torque demand on the shoulder, so yeah, like there's not a lot of this exercise that is actually challenging. It's just that top little bit, if that makes sense. But that doesn't make it a bad exercise. You've just got to know when to use it. But if I only had like time for one delt exercise, like I would pick this, like standing or laying, I would pick this, because this one is going to drop off as you go through it, and it is going to give like a more of a full range challenge. We're going to get a challenge at the start and at the end of this rep. So yeah, I'd say it's more effective throughout the full range, but again, it doesn't make this a bad exercise. I'm obviously still using it here, and if I remember rightly, I went on to like a drop set on this as well, which I quite like doing the cable laterals and then this, because I think the cable laterals really get my like side delts going, get them burning, and then once we jump onto the dumbbells, it's just like prolonging that, just getting a lot of pump in there essentially. But yeah, a little drop set on this as well. Go down to 7.5s, and do I go even lower? Try to remember what I actually done here. Struggling with those 7.5, so yeah, that becomes a struggle. Oh, here we go, 2.5. This is where it could potentially get embarrassing. What am I doing? I'm moving myself. Look at that struggle. And then a hold, of course. Now I'm just throwing them about like an idiot. But yeah, that's just chasing that pump there. Right, moving on to triceps. Now, this is just a tricep pushdown. Something to consider, I suppose, actually, is that I'm using the D handle so that I've got that neutral grip there. I'd always go for a neutral grip on pushdowns. The overhand grip's just not great. Stick with a neutral grip. I've probably bored you enough on this one, so let's just stick with a neutral grip. The challenge in this, like, I'm only going for like a kind of mid-range at the tricep to a shortened range, and it's going to drop off as it gets into that shortened range. We can see the cable, again, the line of force is getting closer to the axis, which in this case is the elbow. So it's dropping off as we go through. It's given a nice even challenge, because the tricep's going to go from like in a lengthened position, it's going to go from weak to mid-range where it's going to be strong, and then shortened range where it's going to be weak. So it's weak, strong, weak. So like we're only working the mid to short range, so it goes from strong to weak, and this goes from heavy to light. So makes a lot of sense, this one. And you know, it's a time-tested tricep exercise. I don't think anyone would argue the tricep pushdown is a shitty exercise. And then finally, an overhead tricep extension, which, to be honest, this is kind of a challenge all the way through. It's hardest at the, well, technically speaking, it should be hardest at the mid-range, because that's where we see like the largest torque demand, but I would say it's hardest in the lengthened range right at the bottom. And this exercise, this takes the long head of the tricep into its most lengthened position, because the long head of the tricep, so it actually, let's just try and get my elbow there. The long head of the tricep originates on the elbow and inserts into the like basically your shoulder. So it goes from the olecranon of the elbow to the infraglenoid fossa of the scapula. That was more for me, just to remember those. But yeah, basically it crosses two joints, so we need to have our shoulder flexed and our elbow flexed as well, in order to get that long head of the tricep into its most lengthened position. So right here, well, maybe a wee bit further. That's it. Try to pause it at the right point here. Let's try that again. So yeah, right here, my long head of my tricep is going to be pretty damn lengthened, and the other heads as well are going to be lengthened. But yeah, I would definitely include one overhead extension into your training. If you can achieve this position, this one's obviously going to be the most lengthened you can pretty much get this into. But it takes a good bit of shoulder stability. If you've been training a while, that shouldn't be a problem. Getting into that amount of shoulder flexion might be a problem. I mean, we're seeing I'm having to extend from my lumbar spine to get there, which has never really caused me any issues, but again, it's like smoking, like I said earlier. Maybe I'm just smoking 20 fags right here and I'm getting away with it. But yeah, I'm having to extend a little bit from my lumbar to get there, but anyway, it's a pretty good one for taking that long head into a lengthened range. And again, it kind of goes from being light to heavy to lighter. As we can see here, like the moment arm wouldn't be as large here as it would be at, no, I missed it, the midpoint, and then it drops off significantly into the shortened range. But I would say like real feel of this one is like at the bottom. It feels pretty damn hard, and if you're going to fail anywhere, I'd say it's going to be at the bottom there. But yeah, definitely want to include in your training. If you can achieve this position, then I would definitely go for this. Cable wants to align with where the arm's going as well, so it wants to kind of follow the same path that your arm's following there too. And there we are, struggling away. But yeah, so that was pretty much that, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed that. As I say, it's not where I usually train, and it's kind of how I would usually train. But yeah, I just thought I'd take you guys through that, show you what a workout looks like, and talk through some points, and hopefully I didn't bore you all to death. So if you like that, or if you've got any questions, just leave me a little comment, and remember, like and subscribe. I'm a YouTuber now, so I've got to say that in every video. I'm sure you're meant to say it at the beginning actually, because no one actually ever watches this long. But anyway, that's it, guys. Hope you enjoyed it.